Yes!
Dear brothers and sisters of the Anonymous Collective, this year the 5th of November was forgotten and went unmarked. And it was an important one. I truly wish we did not let it go to waste. It not only was our 9th annual march since 2012, but 2020 was the year that the movie V for Vendetta was set within. And of course it was no coincidence that the theme of the movie was centered on a fight against a virus which reached pandemic level, and shut the world down into curfews and lockdowns. Since they decided to make our icon the prophet of this future plot in the real world, we were supposed to deliver a reenactment of the 5th of November which mimicked the triumphant ending in the film, to show them we are paying attention and are not afraid. Instead, sadly, most cities were ghost towns. London and Washington DC didn't have nearly as many Anons marching as it did in previous years. Brothers and sisters, we can do better than this. We mustn't lose hope yet. Had the march been successful, we prepared a special speech in transcript which requires a dedicated attention in order to successfully receive its underlining premise and promise. We will continue to deliver it to you despite the disappointment, because it is important that we do not give up now when we are needed more than ever. We are sadly at the end of our journey we began together, and the years are winding down to a finish in their global agenda. We risk losing this battle if we are not cautious. What we do now will affect everything with our outcome. We are on a sensitive balance between succeeding and failing. So, before the year is over, it is appropriate to address what we can expect to see happen from our enemy's response with the revolution we've been pushing so hard for, in our volunteer time and efforts to not only make this revolutionary idea popular, but universally understood in the process of waking up our friends and family to the vulnerability we have found ourselves trapped under. In a perfect world where victory could be instantly ours, we hope to see a future in which children are no longer preyed upon by the wealthy. A changed future where anyone who obtains wealth and power understands not to cross those lines of abuse, with both fear of severe punishment brutally enforced on them, and fear of being dishonored in making the same mistakes of their forefathers who maliciously forgot their own humanity on their endless pursuit of claiming ownership and control over the rest of our species and planet. We are dealing with an enemy who knows us better than we know ourselves, as they continue to collect data from our emails and social media interactions. They not only use all of it to set marketing ploys around our interests, but on a larger scale, they use this data to predict our psychological response and reactions to their propaganda and divisive political operations. An establishment which does not seek to hurt us would not use our own private information as a weapon against us. Instead, they set us up with bait, and then they pin all the blame on us for choosing these actions and consequences meanwhile as they push our likelihood to choose these actions. We are facing an enemy who will use our own addictions and guilty pleasures to lure us into their next prison cell they've prepared for us, an enemy who uses our own fears and insecurities against us. An enemy who encourages our ignorance in order to make us look unworthy of power, an enemy who sets us up to choose the path of least resistance to trade in our old way of life for more convenience, an enemy who does all of these things, and then plays innocent as if they didn't know exactly what they were doing. They gaslight us all, and all of this should outrage you if you know what I'm referring to. It is an enemy who cares very little about our humanity and is more focused on causing us to surrender our rights and power. An enemy who has selfish interests in mind and no limit to how much they will take away from us. We have to know our enemy as well as they know us, in order to expose and defeat it. We have to know what they are looking for from us. We have to have the foresight of a master chess player in order to see their future moves they intend before they make them based on their present actions they placed down. No more can we allow them to use agents of deflection, ad hominem arguments and names like paranoid conspiracy theorists, to block our message from being heard. Every prediction we made of what we knew they would try to do to install Agenda 2030 on us had been fulfilled this year. We don't even need to expose them anymore, they are exposing themselves. Our enemy has grown greedy with their demands for more power, and in the process has forgotten the reason why individual freedom is a necessity for the healthy mental state of a free and open society. The freedom of choice we should have, and the life actions we make, is simply what promotes a sense of personal growth and self-ownership. A society that behaves as if their own choice is not to be trusted by their own guidance anymore is a society that has surrendered their mind over to the powerful, and had given them more rights than their own. A society who will not allow privacy, anonymity, and choice to be granted to every individual is a dystopian culture which strangles the life out of individuality, creativity, and unsurprisingly this, in effect, will extinguish the human spirit. A slave mind-based society then becomes the consensus under these kinds of communist regimes, especially a regime which seeks to use artificial intelligence to do all of the thinking for us. It is a tragedy, and should always be seen as so, that in this consensus formed, there is a tragic loss of self-value which undermines the power of the individual with the traded-off sacrifice to empower the system's strength and success over the individual's fault and error. As members of a growing international anonymous community over these years, we have come to truly know the nature of this threat rising upon us. In it that we are dealing with an enemy that is more so an idea than it is a single individual person, entity, or single family bloodline. To destroy them, we simply need to destroy the ideas that these snake-minded people line up behind, and prove to them and the world exactly why they were bad ideas to follow. As we, the Anonymous Legion, have centered ourselves around the opposing idea that all humans are to be protected under the same birthrights as the rest of the animal kingdom, these ruling elites have centered themselves around the idea that humans are only to be held captive under them, and then reprogrammed to enjoy and accept their captivity for the sake of preserving Earth's planetary health and ecosystems. Agenda 2030, their grand proposal they think we are going to have no choice but to accept, is a system which trades human growth and freedom for planetary equilateral sustainability. Although we Anonymous can agree to an extent that humanity needs to watch over its activity, and limit ourselves, empower ourselves, and center ourselves around keeping this planet a healthy and hospitable place for all life to enjoy, we need not to surrender our own power and birthrights to achieve this. Our enemy has distracted us from discovering this revelation, and wants us to believe that their way is the only way to achieve these same goals. This is how you identify this entity as being hostile towards you and control-driven. Because instead of educating us on how to handle our freedoms more responsibly, they would rather hijack them entirely from us instead. With only 6 corporations owning all of the TV networks that they use to hypnotize us with, they could easily have used television as a tool to produce more responsible and enlightened adult mind states and behaviors. Instead, the television has always been used to plant more fear and ignorance into our actions in order to blame us for being untrustworthy with freedom and too childish to keep them. This goes without saying that we should be using this opportunity now to challenge them on these points noted, instead of letting it slip between the cracks while falling for the idiotic belief that we are not worthy to possess our own civil rights. Time and time again I see people wishing humanity were extinct to save the planet, rather than wishing humanity were just more wise as a collective, and using this wisdom to remain a species coexisting in harmony with nature instead. This is the self-destructive mindset they have been programming in all of us. To be self-destructive means that you believe in your own demise as the solution for the greater good, when it is quite the opposite. We the people can and will be more powerful than the elite in the end, through the awakening of this new and more responsible version of ourselves. It was they who wanted us to be self-destructive, not us, for this is the goal of every eugenicist who seeks to depopulate the planet. They leech on and convince its host to believe they are poison to the planet and should surrender their life to reverse the damage. To be wise is to be more experienced, and once we prove to the ruling class that we are experienced and wise enough to handle our own freedoms, they can no longer easily defeat us with lies and false flags anymore, which we just as easily will now diffuse and reject without tolerance or submission. The key is in knowledge, for we as Anonymous believe knowledge is power. Which it is, and it is the key to setting us all free. Last but not least, the liberal left political faction seems to be the target that the New World Order seeks to protect and offer their Agenda 2030 plan to as their future utopia. So knowing this is the anchored foundation that they are building their plan on, all we have to do is wake the liberals up to them being targeted for Agenda 2030's digital and technocratic enslavement. If we get more than 2/3 of the liberal population awake and angry, the New World Order will lose its foundation it was attempting to attach itself to. We not only need to convince them that they are being taken advantage of, but offer them a plan that fits well with them and is universally agreed upon by all human citizens across the planet. Easier said than done, of course, but we feel confident it can be achieved, even with the limited time we have left. And so, alas, I must bring this to a final close. The lengthy oration I delivered to you today was necessary, and important, and in closing of its summary I put all emphasis again on the highlight that our common enemy is an idea itself, an idea that power-driven elites rely on our belief in, which we can dismantle. The prime revelation we need to remember from this message is that this war we are facing is more of a mental battle than of a physical one. It is the challenging of a bad idea that must be focused on. On a global scale, we have to grow wise to it. In order to destroy their progress in capturing all of us, we have this window of time and opportunity to use the internet to communicate across countries and establish a reformation of their ideas. A global conversation must take place about the better alternatives we can take which can render the New World Order's inhumane ideas obsolete and globally rejected by everyone. This is a conversation which will be remembered and talked about throughout the ages to come. That conversation, and challenging of this reform is coming sooner than you think. That secret idea which will triumph is rising. Please, restore hope in our success, my dear brothers and sisters of the human race and anonymous collective. We have not surrendered yet. I love you all, for we share the same human genetic tree which I and many around me have great pride in protecting. They are seeing us make these moves, and it now will take a very large light for them to enforce on us in order to halt the system entirely enough to stop our plan. Be prepared for their attempt of propping up this giant lie approaching in a few years. We will not falter. We are anonymous, we are legion, we do not forgive, we do not forget. To the deep state which attempted to fool us into their mercy, you no longer need to expect us anymore. We are all aware of you now. So, expect defeat.